All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Julie Erickson, and we are going to talk about K-12 open education resources using AI and OER together. So, as you know, your audio and video are turned off. You please chat because we will be, I'll be asking for some input there. And if you're planning on tweeting, or using social media, here are the hashtags for the event and my Twitter handle. Oh, Dustin, awesome. Western Slope, Colorado. I'm actually in Vail at the moment, so um, maybe we're in the same area. All right, so let me drop the resources one more time so you have them, and off we go. I did start the recording. And we really want to thank the Future of AI for sponsoring this conference and the session. And so I'm really glad that we were able to do this. So who am I and why am I talking about this? So I am a librarian. I have been working with teachers and educators for a long time. And one of the things I have spent a lot of time doing is developing open education resources. And when AI came out, it was like, oh my goodness, this like completes the challenge for using AI or using open education resources, because a few years ago, I was working with a school district to do some science curriculum for K-5. And that's fine, but in South Dakota, we have our own standards. And so we're not using the NGSS standards. And we had content that wasn't in the CK12 textbooks that we were copying as OER. So one of the things we ended up having to do was the teachers had to write sections to complete that content area. And one of the things that really um, it was hard, because you don't want to plagiarize, you want to make sure it's at the right reading level, etc. And so now when I think about how easy it would be to use, one of the education focused resources or ChatGPT to create content that aligns with that standard and also aligns with the reading levels and stuff that you need. And so I'm really excited to kind of combine all these things together. I do have a Padlet and it's linked on our resources, but I'll drop it in the chat too. And so here's the Padlet. And here are the resources again, since I just saw a couple people hop on. And so we are going to go through and talk a little bit about OER, and then we're going to talk about AI, and we're going to think about how we could use them together. So I invite you right now to go ahead and jump into the Padlet and share if you're using OER, because that's where I'm gonna start. So OER is these resources that are freely available, accessible, and openly licensed materials that can be used, shared, and adapted by educators and learners. Why is that a big deal? Well, it's a huge cost savings. When you're looking at purchasing curriculum and materials, that is really, it can be really expensive to purchase textbooks. Utah has developed science textbooks, and this was about 5 years ago that I got the quote from them, but they were able to print their openly licensed textbooks for science for their learners for $5 to $7. And so it's an incredible, savings when you consider that most textbooks are 50 to 75 when you're buying them for students. One of the other really huge benefits is teacher empowerment. And I mean, it's we're honoring teachers and the knowledge and their expertise, and it's really invigorating. When we did the science curriculum, this was a 4-day, really intensive work project. At the end of those 4 days, my teachers were like, "Hey, can we do social studies now?" It's like, I think we need a break. But it's like, who says that? So that's really awesome. And then the content, and this is another thing that I get really excited about, is because when we create openly licensed content, we can do annual updates. And so those regular updates can happen. We can make sure that there's information and resources available to our learners that are current. The other thing that's cool is if standards are updated, you don't have to, you've already got a textbook that's designed to your standards, so you aren't having to create content that is not you can just make those adjustments and carry on. So it's kind of nice that way. All right, so I'm curious. I'm going to jump over to the Padlet real fast, but I'm also going to invite you in the chat. So who here is using openly licensed materials with your learners? Ooh, nice. I'm glad to see that there's a little bit here. Um, and if anybody wants to drop in the chat too, if you're using openly licensed content, that would be great. All right. So what makes openly licensed content work is Creative Commons. And so when we look at Creative Commons licenses, there's a lot there. And so what Creative Commons licenses allow is the creator, so the copyright owner, can assign a Creative Commons license, which gives permission to the users to use the materials. And so as the owner, you still own the copyright, but you are granting that permission. And so when we look at what that enables, you're enabling collaboration. You have that licensing integrity. And you say, what? What does that mean? Well, you get to choose how you want your material used, but you also have that power to be able to say, here, I want my content to be non-commercial. And so when you send that out, people can create off of it, but they can't sell it. You have resource reusability. One of my favorite resources is the OER Commons. And so when I do openly licensed work, it's frequent. I post it on OER Commons because then it's findable by other people. And you have that ability to remix and reuse content. You also have that innovation. And so you may have created something that's great. We share it out there. We license it openly. Now somebody else can take it and make it even better. So I think that's really exciting. Oh, Dustin, that's really awesome that some of the classes you've used in your college system are, use that and you can just go back. Yes. That is one of the great things, is like you have access to the content. And Troy, you're using some ed tech books for master's and doctoral students in teacher education ed tech. Oh, that's awesome too. So yeah, well, I did this presentation at ISTE earlier this week. And there was a gal there in the teacher education ed tech that she'd actually written a textbook on education technology, which was kind of cool, and openly licensed it. So when we, jump into Creative Commons, there are some things to be aware of. And so I took the Creative Commons certificate course this spring, and it was so much fun, and I learned so much. And it's like I knew enough to be dangerous before, and I thought I knew it pretty well, but I learned I learned a lot more. And so things that, keep in mind are compatibility concerns, the conditions and the licenses and how they can be mixed up, the variety of licensing options, license flexibility, attribution requirements, and global relevance. And so I'm going to jump us to this next. Well, I'm going to jump us to our resources because I've got pictures there. And so when we are in your resources, you can see that we have all the different licenses. There's 4 different conditions, and then they combine for 8 Creative Commons licenses. And so when we look at this, you've got their attribution. And so attribution is we just need to give credit. If you have attribution share alike, that means that you have to license your creation that you make from that product the same. And then we have no derivatives, which really isn't an open license. It means that I can share it, but I can't really do anything with it. There is a cool thing, and I encourage you to jump into some of the Creative Commons resources. There's a thing called collections. And so like if you are putting together like a textbook, and you're going to pull in poetry or, different things that are openly licensed, you could put in something that is no derivative because you wouldn't own that copyright. You would just be curating a collection. And so that's kind of a cool thing that I learned in the course. Then we have non-commercial, which means you can't sell it. And then we have non-commercial share alike, which means you have to license it the same. And so this is a nice chart to kind of like help you see what the different options are as you're looking at openly licensed content. Oh, this is awesome, Marlinda. I love that your Houston Community College has been active in OER since the early 2010s. That's cool. I think that's just such a great thing for college and for K-12, because when we look at K-12, you're looking at things like being able to, like in Utah, they were able to print the textbooks. The students were able to annotate in them. They would review them every year and make sure they were updated. There's just so many good things there that it's like, it's so exciting that we have these options. All right, I'm going to hop back over. So large OER repositories, and there's some great ones shared in the chat too, so thank you so much for sharing those. Some of the ones that I bring up just to kind of get people thinking or realizing that you've probably seen this content, like code.org, they are openly licensed. And there's an NSF grant that I'm aware of. They're using code.org to create integrated, math science lessons. And one of the things that goes along with that is because it's an NSF grant, it has to be openly licensed back. And so when we think about that, now all of a sudden we are, starting to develop content even more. CK12 is another one, and I've used that one extensively. And so that's a nice one. And then the University of Michigan has a digital curriculum that they are working on for English or ELA, and that's an interesting one too. And so those are just some of the large collections, but the wealth is in OER Commons because we've got that vast collection, that collaborative community, and the user-friendly interface. So go ahead and use the reactions and tell me who here has used OER Commons for anything. cool. Well, OER Commons is, okay, so OER Commons is like a, what do we call it? They're a curator. And so they pull together the content from lots of places. So yes, if you've spent a lot of time, you know, in different, you know, like if you use code.org regularly, for example, you will find that OER Commons is also in code.org. So like you're not finding, oh my goodness, sorry. You're not going to be finding the content like new computer science content. And I think that can be frustrating if you don't really, you know, think about it. I really like, so when we're in OER Commons, the resources across the top, I do encourage you to check them out. Collections are incredible, but then also the providers, this gives you an entire list of materials that you can go in and see who's contributing content. And so like I talked about code.org, they're in here, CK12 is in here. And so if you are using some of those, you know, those resources and you know about them, and then you come over to OER, you're going to find that it's not as friendly. You're not going to find new content that way. So that is. Oh, and Marlinda shared that she's used Mason OER MetaFinder or MOM. So, ooh, I like that. I'll have to check that out. One of the other things that you can pay for is the hubs. And I like the hubs because that when we're at a state level, we can go in and see if there's anything that our state is doing. You can go in and see what other people are doing. And so I appreciate that. And then groups. Anybody can create groups. I worked with a group of librarians, and one of the things that I did was we worked on integrating OER and K-12, and it was so rewarding, and we spent a lot of time using OER Commons. And so we, you know, found a lesson and we remixed it. We did the kind of evaluated a lesson, and then we created our own lessons. And so people can't join Reaching Out group, but you can see all the content in there. And so that's kind of cool. And so one of the other things that's great about OER Commons is the searchability. And so you can see here that we can really jump in, but I'm going to do the advanced search so you can see how we can narrow down what we're looking for. So we can really go in and look at like our subject area, our educational use, but I really want to focus on material type. And so you'll see you have courseware here. So for those of us that are using, you know, Canvas and some of those other courses, you can jump into them. We also have the content. We can go down and only take items with ratings or tags. So you kind of have that, you know, what's been used. We can also really look at our users, our education levels, our formats, our accessibility. And then, and this is, I think this is my favorite part. And so if you are going to be making something and you know that it's going to be final licensed by NCSA, then you can go ahead and check all the compatible licenses, which would be by NC and by NCSA. And so now when I do a search, it's going to pull up just that information. And so I'm going to search for space exploration. And I've got it limited to those different licenses. This is my big complaint with OER Commons is everything in here is licensed differently. And so like if you're using code.org, you know that their content is going to be licensed the same. So here you'll do have to kind of go in and look and see how each of the things is licensed, but it is really clearly clearly denoted. And then we can also filter more. So OER Commons can be a really awesome resource. And I have a question that is talked about. A big problem is tracking versions of the same source material and cross-reference page numbers from one to the next. I'm all about the versions. One of the things I like about OER Commons is if you do remix something, it will show you the versions, but I've not actually tried to cross-reference page numbers, and so I don't have a good answer for that. But thanks for asking. All right, so now we are going to head back to the slides real fast and look at where AI fits into this OER picture. So AI, generative AI is capable of so many things. And so when I think about all of the things that we can create, I of course, think about copyright because I'm a librarian. And so one of the things that you want to think about with this is the U.S. Copyrights Office stance on copyright currently is you cannot copyright AI material. And so it's something that you can easily incorporate into AI or into OER because it doesn't have that copyright worry. Where are we going to utilize AI in all of this work? So when we think about most of the content that's out there is like a textbook, or maybe it's one lesson, but it may not have the components that you need to actually teach a lesson, like a pre-test or a post-test or a rubric. And this is where you can utilize tools like School AI, Magic School AI, Copilot, Gemini, all of those to be able to create that content. And so I was working with an educator and she created a choice board and just like that. And you just don't see that. I mean, a choice board creation takes a lot of time. And so what this gives us is it gives us, not only do we have that content that is aligned with our standards, that's current, but it also gives us the instructional materials that we need that are relevant to the content. A couple of other things with this are we really see a lot more, like you can add in the differentiation and all that much more easily. Some of the things when we're jumping into that AI component is to remember the elements of a good prompt. And there's tons of these out here, and I'm not going to really belabor the point, but you will get better results with a better prompt. And so that role, that objective, that audience, the context, and then the boundaries, so it's like, what do you want it to look like? Like if you're generating quiz questions in Magic School AI, one of the things to consider is maybe have it generate, you need 10, maybe have it generate 20, because then you can pick and choose the ones that you want to use, and then you can export it and import it into a Google form or a Microsoft form. You have lots of options. Oh, nice, Troy. You shared prompt generation. Cool. I will add all of these amazing resources into our resource document because you guys have shared some phenomenal content. So when I look at what AI can contribute at this point is we can really, take it to the next level. So we've got our openly licensed content, and now we can, utilize it for the personalized paths, the efficiency, and, even the feedback. And so it's really quite exciting. So as we wrap up, I do want to know if there are any questions, and I also want to jump over to our Padlet again and see what has been added here. Ooh, lots of good stuff. So one of the things that I I really recommend for people is to, I mean, there's so many options and it seems like the options change hourly, is to use a couple and not get too bogged down in utilizing and all the new ones. Become familiar with some of the ones that you recognize and go from there rather than learning a new one all the time. And I see it, funding is a huge barrier to implementing OER. I've seen a number of really successful projects, come out of grant, but then we still have to make sure that we're updating. And I think that's where the sticky point comes in. So any other questions or comments before we wrap up our session? All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me today. I will drop the chat resources in our resources. And so here are the resources again. So you have that, and have a great rest of the event. Thank you. Bye, Paige. Yes, power to the librarians.